And okay, recording started. Great. So this is April 30th, and this is the AKV3 meeting. Thanks for everybody for jumping on. Um, I'd like to do quick hellos with everybody in just a second. The focus I would like to bring to this discussion is some discussion about the writing contest that we have going on. We've got about 3 weeks to move that along and elevate the attention on it, as well as get organized with some of the judging. But I also don't want to lose track of the energy that was happening last week about how to increase youth engagement in the future of Alaska, and potentially some summer programming that was going on there. So what I'd like to do is just quickly have everyone just say hi, and if there is also anything in particular you want to bring to the agenda today. And I am going to kind of scoot things along today just because of where I'm at with what I've got going on. So at any rate, let's dive in. Kitty, you're next up on my list.
Okay, so good morning, folks. Yep, glad to be here. Interested in sort of just maintaining I used to do the crew votes, just like staying in sync with the energy of the group here. What's on my mind, and this morning I've got to send in a bit of a blurb, is that I'm going to be offering kind of a work session to the Alaska's fundraising professionals. AFP, they have they meet for some sort of lunch and learns, and working with them on aligning cross sector and creating this alignment between organizations. I've always liked working in the spaces in between organizations. And what occurs to me is sometimes work like what we're doing here, it doesn't fit boundaries really well. And so fundraising can be really challenging. And another thing that I learned from a Foraker study years ago is that Alaskans on as a whole, well, not only are we not great in the haven't been great in the entrepreneurship space, but sort of based on the residents and the wealth of our people, we don't give that well relative to other places. And so I'm thinking about how to create a shift in this philanthropic space to be willing to give more.
Could I have, how about
more generous? And to be willing to play in these experimental spaces that I think are so vital to our future. So I'm gonna do a little sort of pro bono gig and see how it flies. That's my news.
All right, thanks, Kitty. Let's see. Next up on my list is Ryan. Good morning. What's going on, and anything for the agenda?
Hey there. Good morning. It is just another exciting day here in Anchorage, Alaska. Nothing too crazy happening this week. There was a grant that came out from Rasmussen for summer camps. They've got $15,000 funding that's available. I think a max of 45 per organization if an organization is running 3 summer camps. I believe that's tailored a bit towards the rural organizations, but it is out there, and so I'm glad to see that there's support for that sort of thing. Nothing too crazy here, just having lots of exciting conversations about supporting youth, getting that early stage innovation stack built up, and trying to help get folks into the funnel here in Anchorage and in Alaska at large.
And Ryan, we may want to circle back around, but I just want to put this Third Avenue site thing on the radar screen for folks. A really interesting project going on, but let's come back to that in a few minutes if we can. Andy, good morning.
Good morning. So let's see. Greetings again from Arizona. I am here for a few more days and I come back on Tuesday next week. So let's see, this week was the last week of my entrepreneurship class. And one of the things that one of my students has brought up several times in the course of the class, and I think that she is absolutely spot on, is that as an Alaska Native, she really wants to see examples of Alaska Native businesses that have been, that are successful. Not just Alaska Native, but she also wants to see other Alaska-born businesses. She wants to see them, she wants to know who they are. and wants to have a better idea of who has been successful, what has been successful, just to see representation, really, as somebody who is interested in starting a business and running a business in Alaska. And so I think, you know, whatever we're doing is in building this ecosystem, part of it has to be helping to promote Alaska-born businesses and giving them an opportunity to sort of shine and share their successes and maybe some of their struggles as well. Because I don't know if we're visual learners, if people have just become more visual learners, but the ability to just see and learn more visually is important, I think, to a lot of people. So that's kind of where my thoughts have been this week in that. And I'm going to have a really busy weekend grading. I've got lots to grade.
Wonderful, Andy. Thank you. And just a note, Andy, for follow-up later, we have an ongoing need to be able to capture data about startups. We have no data. So when your question comes up about what's happening with Alaska Native startups, what's the experience, challenging successes, what's going on, who do we contact, who are examples, who are mentors, blah, blah, blah. We don't have any data to work with. We don't have any contact lists. We have no database. So I would invite you to circle back around with me in this Innovation Coalition discussion, because I think that will be powerful. It is in Calgary. Their ability to capture and aggregate that information has transformed their ability to mobilize people to do more, because now they can see what's going on, whereas right now it's hidden, and if it's hidden, it doesn't get acted on. So sorry for the stumping there. Good morning, Ben. What's going on? And in particular, if you can touch briefly on the Merrill Field Aerotech activity, because it's coming up right now in discussions on the Third Avenue thing that I mentioned and teased about what Ryan's working on.
Yeah, sure. Good morning. Not much to report. Put on Birkenstocks today and saw it was snowing. Went ahead with Birkenstocks anyway. I think I would not be the best source for information on the Merrill Field thing, other than I just threw a little support behind it. I know that they're getting a little bit of money to do an initial study, and then it's going to take, I think a couple of years. So I think it's something that I don't know your guys' views and positions. I don't understand necessarily the interaction there, but I think there's a lot of time there, and it's still a big maybe. We just need a place where we can do some manufacturing. And so whether we go to Merrill Field and get a little hangar, or go to Ted Stevens and get a little hangar, that's interesting to us. If there's a way to link up with other groups that are interested in doing this stuff, that's even better. So we see our shop becoming more of an integration and engineering facility, and keeping the kind of like heavy machinery out to other locations. So that's kind of our plan in a short version. So yeah, nothing to report, nothing for the agenda. Just glad to be here and hang out and see if there's a place where I can pipe up.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Ben, and for that update. That's helpful for Ryan and I with some discussions that are touching on it. We just don't want to get out of sync with that. Good morning, Laura. What's going on with you? And anything for the agenda today?
I don't have anything for the agenda. I'm still working on the founders group. I'm hoping to get something launched by June. It's not really my super highest priority right now, but it is at the front of my mind. The one thing that did come up this week that I wanted to share with the group was friend of a friend just informed me about a person. I think I don't know where she is, in Juneau, wherever, but she's leaving one of the EAC organizations to focus on supporting Alaska Native kelp farming. And I just thought it kind of fit into last week's discussion. So I'll find out more about that. I don't know if that's a person we want to reach out to. I think it's always good to have the diversity in the group. And yeah, I think the other big milestone this week is we finally turned off all of our Facebook ads. So right now I am no longer giving money to Mark Zuckerberg. And it feels great.
Wonderful. news. Are you selling shoes?
Doing a little better. Yeah. I mean, it was very painful to turn off all these ads, but I think we're getting to a little bit firmer fitting, and it's a complicated story, but I think we're moving in the right direction.
Great, thanks for that. And if you get a chance, with Ben, maybe the two of you sometime might loop back together again, just talk about this founders group thing, because
Would love it.
Ben as a founder brings, obviously his perspective
Yes.
with his own experiences, but through his work at Launch Alaska and some other startups like Turn Again Heavy Lift, has his own really good network of founders and perspectives that I think would
Love
kind of
it.
help energize what you're working on and move that along. And then
Great.
with the kelp farming, be aware of the Mariculture Task Force and the state's training for those kelp farmers. There's a lot of money being put into that, and a surprising number of people interested in that. Good morning,
Great.
Sarah. What's happening with you, and anything for the agenda?
Hey everyone, good to see you. No, nothing really to report. What you mentioned for the agenda, both the writing contest and this conversation around youth mentorship over the summer, is pretty much exactly where my head is at. Really excited to hear that a lot of people are kind of on that wavelength this week and probably the week before as well. So yeah, I'm just interested in having more conversations and trying to foster one myself, but if that's not needed, finding where the other ones are being held. That's pretty much my interest for the next week.
Nice, thank you. Let's see, did I miss anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, who's TMS? I see TMS is the name on Facebook, but I probably ought to recognize it, but I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. TMS?
Sorry, Tracy, my phone for some reason asked for something today, and I'm using a different phone because I'm having technology problems out the bazoo. Hi, sitting in my car, still dodging 6x6s and nothing for the agenda. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good to see you. Yeah, okay, so just a couple quick updates from my brain. I went ahead and did something I was trying to avoid doing, but I've gotten an EIN number for Alaska V3. That's a tax ID number. I needed that to go open up a bank down at Wells Fargo to start putting the money that's been committed through the GoFunder campaign for the writing contest. It's also where I'm going to land the money from APU that we got for the student program. There's right now about $700 in there. There's another 500 coming in from APU. And I think there's another 100 or two from somebody that committed some money for the writing contest I need to track down. But at any rate, we've gotten that started. As we've said before, I've kind of drug my feet with heel marks across the floor on formalizing this thing any sooner than we needed to, but there we go. A couple quick things just to mention. I've just been blown away here recently. Margie got me involved with a session last night on the Thrive Act. And I would encourage folks to learn about it. It's a federal act that is looking at investment in just transitions. And, when she originally threw decolonization thinking to me, I keep learning these new words, and I just feel like I'm just a kindergartner again, understanding what's happening in the world. As I got into regenerative economies, I got into just transitions, and now I'm getting into decolonization thinking. And I've just been blown away by understanding how our current systems kind of bake in doing things the way we've always done them. One of my groups of students at UAA was doing a project looking at the purchasing practices of the municipality and whether or not it's providing fair and equitable access to minority populations and younger startup businesses. And no surprise, it does not look like there's much access there. I realized that it was this colonization type mindset again that kind of bakes in how we do things, and the large external organization control over access to local people to the opportunities and also the input on what is happening. So rocking my world here. I encourage all of you to learn more about regenerative economies, about just transitions, the Thrive Act, and this notion of decolonization and what it means. It's a broader concept about Alaska being able to actually do what we're talking about, which is to take some control over our destiny. And that means kind of taking it away from some folks that have benefited by the way things are today. Any rate, UAA classes are wrapping up, lots of grading. The Third Avenue site project that Ryan and Andy were discussing is exciting. House Bill 170 on green energy bank is really interesting. And I'm going to be starting to travel for a while. So I'll be looking for some help over the next month in terms of some of these meetings to try and keep things going together. Thank you, Sarah, for posting the link to the Thrive agenda in the chat. I think next I'd like to dive into the writing program as opposed to leaving that till later and then running out of time, but then I want to circle back on the summer programming discussion on that, if that's okay. Anything else I missed, or anybody that I missed that wants to catch up? I'll just take a deep breath for a second. Okay. So writing contest programming, I need to ask for help with this one in two specific areas. One is I feel like we had a really nice blast of early communication on this with individuals. I know CITC got something out. The Alaska Humanities Forum did a post on their Facebook. We've put out one or two emails on us. But I'd like to revisit the question of who can do what in order to help increase the outreach. I'm also game to use some of the money that we've gotten because we have a little extra now over the minimum $1,000 that we wanted to have. And we had indicated that if we got more, we'd use it to help promote this further. On how we could do that, whether that is buying some space in ADN, whether that is buying some ads on Facebook, although Laura has convinced me, and I've heard this before, that it's not a good investment anymore. But I'm looking for ideas on who, how, and what can we do to promote this campaign, and specifically any of you that can step up and say, I can do this. And if it costs some money, that's okay. We can talk about that. We've got some money. Thoughts and ideas, please.
I definitely think that we need a designated project manager, someone who facilitates the communications, someone who kind of does the follow-ups weekly with like, okay, here's what we're working on, like beyond the meetings, of course. Not saying I'm stepping up to that role, just saying that I definitely think that needs to be said. That being said, I think that we can reach out all to maybe our networks to see like who maybe has newsletters or their own personal blogs, or even honestly just influence in the community. There are certain people, for example, when they post something on Facebook, it tends to get a lot of reach and interest. So I would be happy, of course, to always step up to the role to help with like the writing side of things. So if we want to maybe templatize a few posts and just send those to people to post, that would be interesting. Or even little excerpts or blurbs to put into newsletters, etc. I'll reach out to Aaron over at 49 State Angel Fund to get something in the newsletter over there. But yeah, other than that, not too sure. Any other thoughts?
Remind me the age range for the contest. I'm sorry.
We have the contest is open to all ages. We have two categories of prizes. One is an open competition for the three categories of essay, short story, and poem. And we specifically have a second set of prizes for the top winner. I think it's either 16 or 18 and under. So basically a youth category and an open category with the option for the youth to win potentially both. But I wanted to carve out to make sure we had at least 3 youth winners, regardless of the overall winners.
So taking that framework, I don't have any current connections, but does anybody have connections with the Anchorage School District or with the state education system? Could we get something out to, youth statewide through the school district for that, youth call? So that thought, I don't know who. So that was one.
Someone that I reached out to was Stacy Miller, who's the entrepreneurship and enterprise teacher over at King Tech. I'm sure I know she's pretty much always willing to help out with anything. Further than that, I have connections to a local like queer youth organization nonprofit, and I can imagine that they would be interested in maybe promoting that. It's not relevant to education, but I mean, it's access to young people. So I could reach out to them too.
I'm wondering if maybe the folks at Out North could be worth reaching out to. I think they've got a connection to their ED, and so I could see if there's any alignment there, if they know of any ways to help get the word out, or if that might be interesting for any of the folks that are connected with them. But do we have like a blurb or like a good pitch, I guess, for forwarding and sending and making that easy to share with folks? If there's like a one sheet or something that I could attach in an email that could help speed that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to, ask Sarah to kind of chime in on this, but I'll tell you that she and, they and Pasquale have a page up on our website that has all the writing content language on that at this point. There's also a nice post that Alaska Humanities Forum did promoting it that I think has a nice picture and post. I'd be, suggesting people go grab that and share it, steal it, whatever. So those are two initial sources. Sarah, do you have more thoughts on additional content you think would be useful to create beyond what's there, or just having people recycle what we've got there already?
I think attaching the link to the web page would be helpful, but I do like the idea of a one page too, because that's a little bit more on like the like business side of things. So if we're reaching out to more professional organizations, then we can just like attach a quick PDF that explains everything. I could probably put that together today really quickly. I'll just pull stuff straight from the web page anyway, the copy. So I focus mostly on the design. So yeah, I can do that rather quickly in Canva.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks. I'll take that and forward it to like the writing groups. I think there's Alaska Women's Writers and the Alaska Writers Guild through the Humanities Forum. I think I've got some contacts there, can get that out. And the Writers Block is an organization that's just is real supportive. So I don't know the folks there, but getting it on their radar. Flyer on the door, they're open now.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe when I do a one pager, I'll also do a little poster that they could print if they wanted to.
Nice. I mean, in some of the Pilates around town, this is just, I don't know, the old school back before pandemic ways of trying to do things. But yeah, I'll use what you sent, Sarah, and get some of those out. And what we really kind of need is sort of somebody involved with like the English curriculum in ASD, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of a district office kind of person. I don't know, might not even be the end of the world to just call the district directory and kind of cold call.
So I'm willing to volunteer to do the district cold call. I think we have to, again, it's the same sort of challenge we had when we talked about the presentation at APU last week. Is it's the end of the academic year. So, I'm happy to volunteer to do that. I'm happy to pull some of the language archive from the website and try to do that. I think another place might be, the folks who do Campbell Creek Science Center, again, but this is the youth side of things. But I will volunteer for that ASD one and also see if they can link me to anybody that's more statewide, because we want this statewide, right? This is not just Anchorage based.
That's correct.
All right, I'll see. I will take on that one.
Awesome. Thanks, Tracy.
On Laura's note in the chat, she mentions Instagram ads. I think that's a really good idea in terms of target audience. If anyone wants to make a TikTok, by all means, go ahead.
Did you already share it with the BEC group? Dave Reese, he's got a massive distribution.
I'm drawing a blank as to whether or not I did or not. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's reaching CTC people all over the state. So
yeah, well, that's a great idea. Ryan, do you want to do that, or do you want me to follow up with him?
Yeah, I can send that out.
That'd be great. I'd like to keep your relationship with Dave developing in terms of connection with what he's doing. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So just a couple others that I know I've got that I was going to just mention here. I've got the APU connections with David Onifrychek and Lee Alexander that I'll chase those down. I've also been in contact with the UAA Creative Writing program and their statewide creative writing contest. It actually is overlapping with this one a little bit, but they've offered to help a little bit with that. And I'll also chase down Alaska Humanity Forum to repost the social media posts they did and make sure it goes out in the next newsletter that's coming up at this point. So I've got a couple pieces in there. Looking for more ideas or thoughts on, is there a place where we spend a couple bucks to put something in any place, or other ideas people have? And then I want to circle back on the question of, is somebody interested in stepping up to help manage this thing, as Sarah suggested? And
So sorry, Kai.
Go for it.
I was thinking one other idea, if we were thinking about, I had no idea, again, having been out of state for 3 years and still kind of getting my feet back underneath me, is this something that would be good to put in the press as opposed to ADN?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be gone for 10 days, or I would consider stepping up for the overall project coordination, but I can't do it while I'm gone. And it's in this next 3-week period. So I apologize, but I'm going to just own that one. I can't do it.
Are you thinking, just for clarification on the Anchorage Press, are you thinking of an ad, or is there a way in the press that you're thinking of that they do community announcements? I actually don't read the press on a regular basis, so I'm not familiar with the format of what you've got in mind there.
Again, they have ads. I don't know if they have community information. I think we could go either route. Okay. If we decide we have money to put into an ad, I'm happy to take on I'll call the press and see what our options are.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be wonderful.
All right.
Especially if they even could take, the information that's on the website and help us put something out there. But, putting in an ad in the next week or two would be wonderful. And I think, elevate the visibility of this to some degree.
Yeah, I just saw the note about they might do an article on it. That was one of my wonderings, is whether they might kind of give us a double hit of an ad plus promotion that way.
Usually the best way to get an article written is to buy an ad, in my experience. Just the way those things work. Okay, second call on a project manager. And all the heads go down. Let's see, did anybody come up? Let's see, statewide, I got that taken care of. Ryan out north. Sarah's doing the one pager. That's great. Sarah, you got a lot going on there. Thank you for what you're stepping up to do there. And Kitty's got the writing group. There was a thought about doing an Instagram ad. I don't look at Instagram. I don't know how to do that. Is somebody interested in an Instagram-y kind of person to know what to do, how to do an ad on Instagram?
Not me, but I know that Gretchen Fosk is rather fond of Instagram. It has been in design marketing for a little while, working on her own projects. I could probably reach out to her and see if she knows anything.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you. And that'd be actually good to get Gretchen maybe interested in this writing contest. Maybe she could also come up with a way to help promote it through her own channels and her interest as a writer. And it just occurred to me, the person we need to follow up with is Samantha
Davenport.
There we go. Thank you. Yes. Because she's at ADN these days. Writing for them, I believe. Anybody got a close relationship with her? Otherwise, I'll track her down. Going once, going twice. Okay.
I'm wondering, an approach that we've taken at Seeds is it's always nice to have a project manager or a point person who's ultimately responsible for a project, or at least carrying it forward. But sometimes that is a hard thing to get together. And so we found some success with having like a breakout panel or a group that is able to spend a little bit more time on it, but not the full amount of time that the full project management may require. So I'm wondering if taking an approach like that could be a fit. Maybe there's a subgroup that would be willing to throw a little bit more time at it. I think I could give maybe like an hour a week or so, but it just sounds like managing that full project sounds daunting to me.
Yeah, well, the other hidden thing behind it that I was, not trying to scare anybody off on, but we need to do some work organizing the judges and the judging process. So there's a goat to feed into the snake here at some point.
I kind of like the idea of a little group though, because I guess my idea as well with like organizing judges was bringing them all into a call. So what if we did like little half-hour calls per week, and then that other half hour, because I'm kind of I'm at the same place. Like I don't really have a lot of time in my schedule, but I do have like an hour or two, of course. So, maybe like an hour call, 45-minute call, and then an hour a week doing the emails essentially.
Yeah, I'd chime in on a group, and when I reach out to my friend, I'm gonna ask about judges. So some of these writers, part of the writers group might be good judges. See if I can get them to nominate one or two. How many judges total do we need? One.
I'm guessing, purely spitballing this. I don't think we're going to get more than, I don't know, 20, maybe 30 submissions. If we get that many, I'll be satisfied. And
right.
So in my mind, if we get, 4-ish judges, 4 or 5, enough that everybody can go through it, everything gets submitted can get, looked at, a couple times by a couple judges and talk about it. I think it's going to be fairly modest this year.
Sure.
Area and
all right, I think that you're in the right ratios. And I'll see if I can solicit one, maybe two, if they're really excited.
Yeah, I have 2 people who have expressed interest. And then of course I myself as well am willing to judge. So.
And I've got in the judges list that I've got right now, it's got Sarah and Tracy and Margie and Mita. I need to confirm Alex and Elise. And there was a suggestion about Bill Sherwanet. I think that's it.
So in a way, you've got enough names, but we also talked at one point about like a big name that might draw attention to this and sort of be a highlighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be good. I think at least Pacotac has some, good name recognition there. Bill Sherwanet does also.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's wrap this up with some clarification. If we're going to go with kind of a small subgroup to meet and keep this thing moving without necessarily dragging everybody through the weeds on this, obviously I'm going to stick with this thing and stay close to it, albeit out of electron range for 1 week coming up in May. But other than that, I'm sensing Sarah and potentially Ryan, maybe Tracy, maybe Kitty on that core group of folks that want to focus on this.
Yeah, and I'd say we should meet probably like whatever time makes sense to all of us, of course, but I'm usually fairly open on Mondays, and then that starts kind of a, opening into what we should follow through into the week, and then we can report back on Fridays here. Thoughts?
Yeah, Monday morning before 10 would be, maybe this coming Monday, just to get grounded. Something like 9:30 or 9 o'clock would be good.
9 would be good. I'd start at 10, so I could, be available until about 9:50 or so, then have to head into work. So,
sure. Yeah, I wouldn't want to keep the meetings more than like 45 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. So 9 to 9:45. I can get a
Perfect.
Zoom link out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm just checking my calendar for Monday. what is Monday going to be? We're into May next week. Wow.
Yeah, May 3rd.
Yeah, no, that works out great. Okay.
We're in May tomorrow.
So I've got you down, Sarah, to send out an invite. For 9 a.m. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for the time on that discussion. I think we made a lot of good progress on that. And the notes are in the notes for anyone wanting to follow up on commitments and ideas that you've pitched out there. So let's shift gears now back into the discussion we had last week about trying to build upon the youth engagement discussion in general. I know there's been some specific summer activities that were getting kicked around, and I'll kind of toss it out because I know that Sarah and Ryan have been kicking around some ideas, and I've kind of loosely kept up with some of them, but not completely. I wonder if the two of you want to kind of pitch where things are at and how we might move this discussion along, or where you'd like to take the discussion.
I have no idea where things are at. That's where I'm at with all of this. I'm trying to figure out contextually where everything is at so that I can identify if there is a gap to be filled for, and then me pioneer that. But like most things in the ecosystem, it seems I'm gonna have to be kind of the person to reach out to all of those individual nodes and find out what's going on, and rather than just bringing them all together. So that's fine. I can do that. But if you have any leads, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, I guess I can piggyback on that a little bit, Sarah. I think you're doing a great job of pinging folks, kind of keeping the conversation alive, raising awareness that there is this sort of conversation happening in our community, and that there is a bit of joint interest among a bunch of different groups. I think that I think we're at the stage where we're just sort of starting to build awareness that there is a desire, is an opportunity for a youth or young folks innovation, entrepreneurship, incubator, early stage accelerator, something or other, whatever we want to call it. It seems that there's a lot of different lenses that folks are looking through, but everybody is sort of looking towards the same point. And that's pretty exciting to me. And so as that conversation keeps going and people kind of start to feel that out and it firms up a little bit, I think things will continue to come together. Kai mentioned that there was a conversation earlier this week around the 3rd Avenue site, and that's the site of the Alaska Native Hospital, 3rd and Ingra. And so that location is held by the Heritage Land Bank. And Shelley Roughton has been doing the placemaking around that site in conjunction with Liz Snyder and Chris Constant and a whole cadre of other folks who have been recognizing the potential and the importance of that site and have been working to build a vision around it. And so there's a few different project plans or potentials that could come together there. And there are a few groups that are actively going to be doing work on the site. Alaska Food Policy Council has an orchard that's going to be going in this summer. Fingers crossed. Alaska Seeds of Change is going to be doing some row cropping on the site, doing some workforce development work there. But there's a larger vision beyond that. That's just some basic site activation. But the larger vision is to have some actual development that happens on the site, potentially with some housing, with some commercial space. And one of those spaces, it has the idea of being like an innovation lab of some sort, or an incubation space of some sort. And so this concept of having an innovation space that has been floating around potentially has a space to land, or a space to be realized. What exactly that looks like, not sure. Who the stakeholders are to bring that thing together, not sure. Considering the heritage of the site, folks like ANTHC or Cook Inlet Tribal Council or Cook Inlet Housing Authority or APU, All of those entities seem like they could be a good fit for the to lead the development and to be a site manager of sorts. But I think that there is potential beyond just one single entity to manage the site, to have this collective collaboration that happens on the site, to really have it be a node within our innovation network that we have here. And so that's somewhat how that connects in with the Merrill Field site, would be the connection with Shelley, as they own land at Merrill Field as well, and they're looking to do some development there. And a connection as well with the innovation ecosystem. The challenge that has been observed is that there is there are lots of resources that are available at the top end of the innovation ecosystem. We've got Launch Alaska, we've got GBeta, and 49th State Angel Fund are going to be helping to pad some of that middle space. Anchorage Community Land Trust and their Set Up Shop program are there to help folks. But if you're just starting to learn about innovation, about entrepreneurship, just trying to build up those skills and get engaged, there's a bit of a gap there. And so recognizing that there's a need to, for lack of a better term, feed the funnel and get more folks in at the beginning so that we have more highly qualified leads heading out the other side. We need to start building up some more connection points for folks and more opportunities to build those skills. I think that there's a lot of work around what specifically that looks like, what the funding for that looks like, how you can recapture some of that, some of the value that the folks who are going through the program gain. Putting it bluntly, the folks that come through Seeds of Change, they get a lot of great workforce development skills. They are a more highly qualified employee when they exit, but their next employer has no incentive to give Seeds of Change any money. And so I think that there's going to be kind of a similar thing with the folks that are going through an incubator space like this, where they're going to come through, they're going to learn a lot of skills, they're going to have the potential to earn more, but what sort of incentive do they have to feed back into the program to help the next generation of folks that come through, or that next cohort of folks come through? And so that's where exploring some different business models or asset programs could be helpful. But lots of questions, lots of potential, and we're just sort of seeing where things go and kind of doing the work that Sarah's doing and kind of helping to collaborate and connect and hold space for folks to gather, and kind of pointing out and saying like, hey, there's something there. So that was my long-winded explanation of the Third Avenue site and everything that's happening there. It looks like I've got a question. The connection between the top of the funnel, early stage entrepreneurs, and the land organizations that I'm talking about. So the early stage entrepreneurs, right now they do not have a place to go to. The land organizations, the Heritage Land Bank has that site at 3rd and Ingra and is open to having an incubation or innovation space.
But there's no building there, right? There's
Yeah,
no
that's right.
building.
Yeah,
Yes, there's no building, or yes, there is a building.
that is correct. Right now, there is no building.
But Laura, a Heritage Land Bank comes in with a checkbook that can write checks for 20 or 30 million dollars. So
Sure. Okay, I'm just catching up. It's just, I'm confused by the concept, but I'm sure it's a good one. I'm just not tracking. But
Yeah,
I
that's
can
okay.
catch up offline on this.
It's a blank slate right now. I mean, it is literally a parking lot, but there is a
I'm
number
very
of,
familiar with the property.
yeah, it's a blank slate. And so, whatever that looks like, there is interest in developing that space. There's some capital that is willing to develop that space. And there's a lot of potential positive impacts that could come out of developing that space. And so we're at the stage of sharing what a vision for that space could look like and how that could be a positive thing in our community. Basically, creating the vision for why folks should open their pocketbooks and put money into developing that site and how that could help.
I guess where I'm having trouble is, I don't know. Let me just think about this and I'll connect with you guys offline.
yeah,
Okay.
Great. I kind of sense, Laura, you've got some experience and some history with this. It sounds like it'd be valuable to tie that in at some point.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing what you've got to say. You know, I very much recognize that I'm still pretty wet behind the ears and I've got lots to learn, and that Anchorage is a community that is still pretty young, but still has quite a bit of history to it. And so, you know, perhaps there are things that I just do not know.
Hey, Ben, I want to put you on the spot if I can. What's your view of all of this in terms of the need for early stage space, the idea about youth activities for the summer, getting folks involved in entrepreneurship? How does all this resonate with you or not in terms of what's needed, what could be maybe useful to do?
Yeah, I think I'm probably not the most informed person. I think what I see in trying to mentor people one-on-one and work with a lot of teams directly is that there is desire, and if we can find ways to turn that early curiosity and desire into action, then I think it's a huge win. So I think like what Ryan's talking about, especially with like reaching out to youth and giving youth activities and stuff, makes a lot of sense. We also see like, you know, like the accelerator at the university is trying to connect with university students, and I think it's becoming more successful. Like I see a lot more engagement with that. So I think there's positive trends there. Anytime we can get more people in the funnel, it's a good thing. I get asked a lot like, well, if there's all this pent up demand, there's all these support systems, where are the people? And I think when I think about my personal experience, it's just, you know, growing up in Nikiski, it's just, you know, I have a lot of friends who are like, well, I'm not going to put on a suit and go to a bank. You know, I'm like, I've never done either of those things. And so I think demystifying is a big piece of it, and making it, and I think a lot of that is kind of ignoring the Valley approach of just like the hustle and the crushing it and all the verbs that are evil and toxic and weird. And just like demystifying, being like, hey, a company is a vehicle to do a cool thing. Grab some friends and come along. So I think if that's kind of what we're talking about, it makes a ton of sense. And knowing Ryan, I assume that that's like the level that we're talking about here. So I think it's really valuable, and connecting with youth is a really big deal. I think it's also important to get people who want to spend the next 50, 60 years here engaged while they have 50, 60 years to go. So I don't want to do anything that's ageist or out of line, but I think that's up to, you know, an inclusive group of people that want to build this state to start to keep building it, right? And so the younger we can get our little claws in them, you know, I think the better off. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's always good to keep pushing on these things, and I think I've personally like seen ups and downs from it, and sometimes I'm a little more cynical than other times, but I feel pretty good about it overall. So
A couple thoughts I want to throw into this discussion. One is I've had a really interesting discussion with the students over the last week or so. I presented to them the idea that entrepreneurship was a Trojan horse type of thing, and some of them jumped to the war theme of going in and then taking over, which wasn't what I meant, but it came out of a discussion with Andy Stahl from Kauffman Foundation, who is saying the reason Kauffman Foundation is so invested in entrepreneurship and ecosystem building is because they found that teaching entrepreneurship is actually not teaching entrepreneurship at the end of the day. It's teaching people how to take control of their destiny and the opportunities that they see in their lives. And you can get people interested in entrepreneurship because it's kind of fun and it's, you know, an interesting thing to do, sounds exciting and whatnot. And so you get them in the door to do that entrepreneurial thing. But it actually doesn't matter in the end whether or not they become an entrepreneur and start up their own business. What you're really doing is teaching them to engage in opportunities, to do discovery about needs and what is going on, and to figure out how to work collaboratively to take action. And so I think there's something really valuable in that lesson from Kauffman about how we can use innovation entrepreneurship to kind of get folks interested in something, but also to realize what we're really doing is building the capacity to engage people in this next Alaska discussion, which is empowering them to be able to think about the future, to be able to believe in themselves, and to work together to achieve things that change or transform our society, as opposed to just perpetuating it. It's that decolonization thing again, where I made this connection the last couple of days. Like I said, just kind of rocked my boat in terms of realizing how teaching entrepreneurship and empowering individuals is a form of decolonizing, past practices and creating the potential for people to look at things in a new way. I would like to just, wrap up my thought here with a couple ideas. One is I still am really fascinated with the idea of building a vision for what a unique Alaskan innovation ecosystem program looks like. I don't want to go to sleep in the summer. I want to try and actually use the summer to wake us up in these areas here. But I also want to figure out how to uniquely do that in an Alaskan way, whether that's events at Kincaid, going out on hikes, whether or not it's a canoe trip, whether or not it's other activities that uniquely celebrate, our Alaskan summer and the energy that it has and the energy it gives us, but to direct that energy into these discussions. And one thing in particular I'm interested in is this civics issue of Next Alaska and whether or not there's an opportunity to do some sort of Next Alaska event. I think, from my standpoint, maybe later in July, it could be a startup weekend-ish type of thing around civics and Next Alaska and getting folks together as we've done with other startup weekends, but maybe motivate them around challenges and ideas around the Next Alaska. This civics, and that's SIVX, is a program I'm working on nationally about engaging people in civic innovation. So just a lot of thoughts here. I love the support and the energy on this topic, and I want to figure out how to operationalize it into, a couple of things that we could do after the writing contest that kind of builds upon the momentum of working on some of these projects.
Here's what I.
Yeah, Andy, I'm looking at your note in there. I was on the phone with somebody from Ohio State last week, and he said something that just really stuck with me. He says, we realize in the end that we're not incubating businesses, we're incubating people.
Yeah, Kai, you mentioned when we were having the presentation, the APU presentation, you were mentioning like, how do we make that connection between our older folks in the community and our younger folks? How do we get really intentional about that and trying to bridge that gap? And I think, Ben's touched on it and I've witnessed it firsthand as well, that just having those conversations with people, that mentorship opportunities, having the space for that, taking the time for that, that in my mind, that seems to be the most effective way to make those connections and to get young people involved. It's kind of like modeling and showing, by spending time with someone that you care about them, you're invested in them, and in proxy, you're invested in the future of the community. And I had this observation, or the thought occurred to me that I think that this group is already doing that, and that maybe that's why to us, like, that it's just not an obvious thing. It's because we're in it. But creating some more opportunities and more spaces for that sort of thing to happen, I think is what we're exploring here, and I think has the potential to make a serious impact.
I think you're right. As long as you're not putting me in the category of being an elder yet. Go for it, Laura.
I think, I'm listening to what you're talking about. A lot of it resonates. I think there's.
That didn't sound
Sorry,
good.
guys. Hang on, let me see what's going
Somebody else want to chime in while Laura's checking on whatever that strange noise was? So while we're waiting for it to come back, then the piece of this that I'm wondering about, kind of circling back to early discussion, is I think there may be an opportunity to ask if there's a group of folks that want to dive deeper into this summer issue. To the extent that it's the same folks working on the writing program, then maybe there's a little too much. We've got to sequence things, but if there's some others that want to uniquely dive into this thing, we can either leave it as a general topic for these weekly calls, or it could form into a more focused area. But I'll leave that thought for a second. Now Laura's back, and hopefully everything's okay at the house.
Everything's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think when you were talking, I was thinking, I don't help people. I don't help people in Anchorage. I don't mentor people. I don't talk to people, other startups. I used to do that a little bit more, but right now, you know, everything seems to be incredibly messed up. And I agree that a space is really important. I have a hard time believing that the next step is to focus on a building, because we have lots of buildings that could be used. But aside from that, you know, I understand the interest in pursuing something like that, and getting a space where activity can happen is very, very important. And I think getting it going sooner rather than later is kind of critical. Whether it's, you know, if your issue is pandemic and you can't meet inside buildings, then let's go to a park, like not, you know, like tomorrow. Not in 3 months. Let's get some kind of in-person thing going sooner rather than later. I don't mean tomorrow. But, you know, to me, it's like this, we've talked about this before. It's the discoordination of all these different efforts. And I don't know what the solution is. I don't have a solution or a particular idea, but I know that that's the problem. You know, we've got the SBDC, we've got all these different entities. You guys are constantly mentioning entities that I've never heard of before. And, you know, we have this same problem that we've had since the beginning, which is how do you get the word out? I don't know the answers, but I do know that's the problem. And I would love to, you know, talk with other younger entrepreneurs or newer entrepreneurs and share with them what I know. But am I doing that? Absolutely not. Nobody reaches out to me. I don't know who to reach out to. The knowledge that I've learned in the last 6 years is completely not shared. I wish I wasn't living in an isolated bubble. That's the end of my rant.
I think it's such an important, you know, issue you're bringing up about how do we be available? Are we available? How do folks that might want to find us? Because, you know, I suspect that you're like I am, which is probably more available than some people might realize if they knew how to just pick up a phone and call you, that chances are you'd answer the phone and love to talk with somebody. But there's a gap in how to do that. It's 11. I'd like to wrap up. My world is a hurricane right now. And today what I'd like to do is just go around really quickly, one thing from each of you, just kind of what you're taking away from today. And then we'll head on for the day. Kitty?
Well, I mean, my takeaway is that a few small actions that I can take are going to be helpful. So I'm going to commit to those, be part of like a team effort. And, you know, some of what Laura was saying just struck me about, like, I think there is some tangible link and leverage opportunities that, you know, maybe we can design within ourselves some strategic doing kind of dialogues and really think through what are the most feasible near-term steps past writing contest, or, you know, ramping up as that one winds down. I think it's time for us to really kind of think through those prototype experimental things that keep building momentum. That's where I'm at.
Tracy? Going once, going twice. Tracy still there? Okay, Ryan.
I am, yeah, I'm still kind of, you know, just processing all the things, but, you know, silos stick with me. I think that there's just so many opportunities, so many people, so many places, so many resources. I mean, we just have such a surplus, and we just don't even know what to do with it. And these conversations are just a really great way to help highlight that and to help make some of those connections. And I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Andy?
I think what I'm thinking about is how do we draw all of our resources together into one place? And one of the things that I discovered a few months ago is a online platform that is specifically designed for like meetups and conferences and like after hour kind of networking opportunities where you have breakout rooms, and so you can have themed breakout rooms and let people kind of wander in and talk to each other. And then they also had a really cool function that was kind of like speed dating. And so you get randomly paired with another person and you can talk for, I think it was like 5 minutes, and then they kick you out and pair you with somebody else, which is a really cool way to just kind of meet people from all over and get to know them. And, you know, at the end you can get contact information, emails, or, you know, social media handles, whatever. And that's something that we could certainly do in the near term to sort of, you know, it'll take a while to get, you know, momentum going and getting people involved. But I think if we have like a biweekly or monthly opportunity for people to just kind of wander in and do this networking that is free, I think that's really, and that's something that we could do fairly easily. And, you know, I would be happy to help manage something like that. Because to me, that's just like making those connections is so fundamentally important. And that's like where I'm really focused. So, so something like that, until we get a meeting space and until we get past this COVID not wanting to meet a whole lot, it would be great to sort of begin building this virtual networking community, just to let people find out what's out there and who else is doing the same thing they're doing, and maybe figure out ways to combine forces. You know, as Ryan said, there's a lot of great things happening, and it's almost like too much going on, but yet people aren't connecting with it. And so, you know, maybe this is one way that we could do that. Just a thought.
Wonderful, thanks. Ben?
Ben said to hop off.
Gotcha, thank you. Laura?
Well, I really like the idea of a once a month, you know, happy hour. Like that seems about the lowest bar that we could possibly get together. And at least we would be connected in meeting and, you know, have a place that was regular people could go. I think that, you know, you could just make it in an outdoor place, and then the, you know, COVID stuff is less of an issue as as these restaurants start ramping up. And to tell you the truth, downtown restaurants or restaurants all over this city are just suffering. So, I mean, I don't mind giving them some extra money for a beer, which I have not had in a group in a year. So I think supporting the local restaurants would be a nice way to just get together. I mean, all of the things that I've done in the last 15 years that have to do with organizing, community organizing, or music or startups or any of that stuff is just plagued by shouting into the void. I mean, there's so many voices, there's so many things happening. We're all competing for attention. And I think, you know, my experience is there's all these entities, they're working on whatever their mission is. Their primary focus is satisfying their own payroll and satisfying their own, you know, sort of limited agenda. And everybody tries to get the word out, and it's a near impossible task. So I would be really happy if all we did was get together and start focusing on just what are the building blocks of the ecosystem and what is everybody doing. I'm sure that kind of assessment has already been done, but it seems like it's still needed. Like who's doing what, who is their audience, who are they targeting, how can we coordinate this communication problem that we've had forever? And I sound really sour, but I'm actually excited.
Sounds good. Thanks, Laura. Sarah, takeaway from today?
I'm taking away quite a few projects, but apart from that, just yeah, like a lot of really good conversation around what the ecosystem really needs and these concepts of like, I really liked Kitty's like idea of like existing between organizations. Because I think that that's sort of where I land in the realm as well. Even just like in content marketing, I'm kind of the, B2B, I'm very much that kind of in between messaging and stuff. So yeah, I am really interested in continuing these conversations. Again, I want to mention if you have any leads to any conversations about other youth programs happening or being conceptualized, if you can bring me into the loop, please do. But apart from that, I am going to be spending some time on Canva today.
Wonderful. Thanks for doing that. The takeaway today for me is that it would be really valuable for us to find and get somebody that's interested in being the chief excitement officer. I'm a doer. I'm not going to be the one that's going to, be the fun manager. And I think there's a lot of interest and motivation to do that. And I just would invite anybody that wants to step into the space of being the chief excitement officer in terms of planning events, organizing things, and kind of bringing that voice to what we do to please step into it. I tend to get
Well, let me comment on that. I don't think you need a chief excitement officer. And I think if you try to go get that, you're going to have people just sticking their head under the pillow. I think what you need is quality programming, and people will respond to that. Like, don't turn yourself into a pretzel. I think we can put together things that are meaningful to people and they will respond. I think that's after my rant about shouting into the void, but I still think it's possible.
Hey, Laura, this is Kitty. You've really got me thinking. Let's offline talk through what you're envisioning and what I've done some of before, and I've been dying to get going in Alaska. So let's pick I don't know. I feel like maybe you could help refine the
That sounds
ideas I
great.
had for
I think brainstorm is
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah. And I've seen several things kind of work, and I've been wanting something to happen for Alaska, and I've been pushing that water uphill, but I feel like this is the place where it can really be fruitful. Let's connect.
I mean, the arts community has been suffering for this problem the whole of forever. There's just this perennial conversation about how do we share what events are happening in pandemic. It's a non-issue, but it's going to rear its head again as soon as the music and arts community starts being active again, assuming all the venues aren't dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I want the music and arts to be my fun. I mean, and then I want to have like the serious work stuff to come out of it afterwards. But I think, again, back to our silos, I think that's the challenge, is that we've got these things in, individual groups. And like, I love music, I love to paint, I love business and community development. Like, why do I have to separate that? Let's pull it all together. I'm excited to hear what you all brainstorm up.
Yeah, well, I think, once again, you're all talking about a really fascinating issue, which is it really becomes about the connections. And the world can be viewed in many cases as either nodes or connections. And I think we've gotten into a culture that's very node focused. That is, everybody's got their programs and activities, and there's a role to be played on building and strengthening the connections that are going on, as opposed to another node. But at any rate, final thought I just wanted to throw out also was just that I think there's something valuable for us to experiment with, which is if we had to do face-to-face meetings for what we've been doing for the last couple of months, we wouldn't be where we're at right now in terms of the involvement. You all are busy, we're all busy. If we all had to go someplace every Friday to do this with transportation time before and after losing a whole Friday morning, we wouldn't be here. And I think, all of Alaska, our culture, we have an opportunity to figure out how to develop a new normal in the future that blends this virtual capability that makes it flexible to have these kind of meetings with the place-based activity also to do that. So at any rate, any final wrap-up thoughts? Otherwise, we need to move on today.
I guess I'm going to chime in. What we're, in regenerative language, we're trying to build the field, that resonating, vibrating field. And I fully agree. We've got to keep the virtual piece, otherwise it becomes Anchorage centric. But how do you promote both the physical and the virtual in an ongoing regenerative way? That'll be fun. And Laura, I've got your contacts. Thanks.
All anytime.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for diving in today, and once again a lively and for me very interesting discussion. But also appreciate the connections that are being built here. And as always, I encourage you to continue to build those outside of these discussions, as well as be a connection builder within your networks and bring others into this discussion or aware of what was going on. So thank you all for doing that. I'm going to kill the recording here. I'll be on for just a couple more minutes if anybody has anything